In this video, we'll set up a Guix channel. Previously, I showed you how to package a Debian archive into a Guix package, and I also showed you how I pulled out all of the PostgreSQL installation, configuration, and loading from LIMS Nucleus and packaged that into a Guix package. So now that I have these two packages, I would like to make them easily available to colleagues and customers. To achieve that, I'll set up a Guix channel. The two packages that I have are called PostgreSQL Client and LNPG. PostgreSQL Client is the PostgreSQL client software that I packaged from a Debian archive. This is not available on the main Guix channel, probably due to licensing issues. LNPG is the LIMS Nucleus PostgreSQL installation, configuration, and loading software. My ultimate goal is a single install command, Guix package install LIMS Nucleus. To achieve this, all of my dependencies need to be packaged so that they can be defined as dependencies within the Guix packaging recipes. All of the information for setting up a channel is available in the Guix manual, but there are a few details surrounding Git configuration, GPG identity management that aren't touched upon. I found myself going back and forth between different activities to complete the channel setup process. So what I'll present here is what I think is an efficient sequence of activities to complete the channel setup. So the sequence of activities looks like this. We'll start by generating our GPG private public key pair. We'll configure Git locally, and then we'll create the remote repository. We'll generate an orphan keyring branch that'll contain our public key. We'll also generate the branch that contains the packaging recipes that we would like to distribute. Then we'll configure the local channels.scm, and I'll end with an Amazon Web Service demo where I show the impact of having a channels SCM configuration before and after a Guix pull. To work with GPG, take a look at the manual located at this link. Here are the commands that you will need to use. GenKey will generate your public key private key pair and deposit it into your key store. You will be prompted with numerous questions like name and email address. Once it's in the store, you can look at the entire contents of the key store with the list keys command, or you can look at one particular entry using either the email or the fingerprint ID. So here's my fingerprint ID. Note that when I refer to the fingerprint ID, in the case where I want to export the public key, I'm only using enough of the final characters that provide uniqueness. So this command will deposit your public key into a text file. And this is what the public key looks like. Sequence of characters that begins with begin PGP public key and ends with end PGP public key. This is currently in my hard drive at the very top directory. You can see this is the file here, and if we look at the content of that file, it is that public key block. So now we have our fingerprint and a text file that contains our public key, and we're ready to move on to the next step, which is to configure local Git. So the file that we're configuring is right here, Git Config. There are two commands you need to use. You must provide your signing key, which is your fingerprint that we just generated, and then you need to indicate that you want the default branch to be master. Guix works with master. Git used to work with master, but Git went woke. Apparently some people are offended by the term master, and so Git has changed the primary branch to main, M-A-I-N. You need to override that with this command. Once these two commands have been executed, you can take a look at your Git config, and it should look like this. So you're indicating your signing key, your name and email address, and you're indicating that you want the default branch to be master. Next, we need to configure the remote Git repository. I will use my personal account. I created a new repository, Lab Solutions, that will host my channel and the packaging recipes that I want to distribute. Let's take a look at that. So here we are at my personal account in the Lab Solutions repository that I have created. So you create a new repository under this menu item and give it a name, and once it's created, you need to clone it to your local hard drive. We will start by creating the keyring branch. The keyring branch will contain my public key. So this is the sequence of commands that you need to execute. So first, you need to clone your repository and make it local on your hard drive. CD into the repository, and then create the new branch keyring and make it an orphan. Git checkout orphan keyring. Remove everything in that directory, including git ignore, and then create the readme file with this command that will paste in some descriptive information for this branch. Add it to the repository. Copy your local public key. I showed you this is my public key residing at my top directory. Copy it into the empty keyring branch and add it so that Git will track. Then issue a commit and push it to the remote repository. Then switch over to master. Now you want to deposit all the files that you would like to share in the master branch. For me, it's the recipe files for LNPG and the PostgreSQL client. Git commit, and it's important that you -S. This is going to sign your commit and push to the remote repository. Once we've completed those steps, we can now look at the remote repository, switch into our keyring branch, and see that you have your public key, which I've already shown you, and the README that gives a short description of what this branch is about. Switch to the master. So there are 4 files that you need to add to your master branch. We'll look at each of them individually. You need to generate these locally, add them to your local repository, do a signed commit, and then push to get them over here. So first, Guix authorizations. This is the file that will provide the fingerprint for each developer that is allowed to contribute to this repository. Guix channel gives the version, the name of the news file, and the URL. There are templates for each of these files that you can find in the Guix manual, so you can copy, paste, and modify to suit your needs. README.org is a markdown file. When rendered, it looks like this. It is the channel information that a user needs to supplement their channels.scm file. So anyone who's interested in your packages would come here and either copy paste this entire text into their channels SCM, or if they already have supplemented their channels SCM, they need to cons on one more element to the list. And then news.txt is news you would like to provide your users with. Next, we can look in Lab Solutions, and these are the actual files that we want to distribute. These are the packaging recipes. So I have 2, LNPG and PostgreSQL client. They are written as modules. If we look at the LNPG, provides the module Lab Solutions LNPG. So LNPG is at the end, and you can see that it has a dependency, Artanis 0.51. Currently, the version of Artanis that is available is 0.5, but LIMS Nucleus has a feature that needs to be added to Artanis, and there are a couple of bug fixes, and those are done up here. So here's the beginning of LNPG, and this is the end of Artanis. You can see that it is defined as version 0.5.1. So these names are what we will query once we've loaded these recipes, and if we can find these names, we'll know that our channel is working properly. With these files in place, the repository, the remote repository, is now ready. Next, you need to set up the channels.scm file. So this is found in .config Guix directory. It's easiest for me to just show you what mine looks like. Again, you can find a template for this in the Guix manual. Be sure to include branch master, as that's not mentioned. You indicate the URL of the channel. You provide the fingerprint of the developer and also the channel introduction. So let's look at that. Channel commit 1D641. This is the first commit that you are making available on your channel. Let's look at the commits. So it will be an early commit. right here, 1D641. So apparently the commit where I added my keyring, I also generated my channels.scm, and for a channel introduction, I gave this commit. So this commit and all newer commits are available for distribution on my channel. Note the verified. This means that the commit was assigned commit. Once we have completed the editing of our channel's SCM file, our local configuration is complete and we are ready to test our channel. I'll do that on Amazon Web Services. This will allow me to set up a clean install and not have the complications of all the clutter on my desktop. To do that, I'll need to do a little bit of pre-configuration. I'll be making use of a Debian instance, and I'll apt-get install new PG, Git, and the naming service, which is required by Guix. I'll install the Guix package manager using the shell installer script that can be found here. I'll install the UTF-8 locales, and then I'll do a Guix pull. Okay, so here we are on Amazon Web Services. I've set up a Debian instance as previously described. We can look at what is installed, and it's just the UTF-8 locales. I've transferred over the channel's SCM and my public key, but neither have been installed. The key has to go into the key store, and the channels file needs to be moved into .config/Guix. So let's do a Guix pull. And so you can see the only channel being pulled from is the main Guix repository at Savannah. This will take less than a minute because I did a Guix pull probably 5 minutes ago, so there should be no commits or unlikely to be any commits. And once this completes, we will search for our PostgreSQL client. Since that's being served by my channel, we shouldn't find it because we haven't pulled from the channel yet. Okay, so there's nothing to be done. Let's search now for PostgreSQL client. It is not found. So next we will move our channels.scm to where it belongs in .config/Guix, and we'll import our GPG key. And now we'll try a Guix pull. And so you can see that it is now pulling from Lab Solutions. Once this completes, we should be able to look for our PostgreSQL, and it should be found, and we'll be able to install. Let's search now for PostgreSQL client, and it is found, and we're told that the location is in the Lab Solutions channel, found at www.labsolutions.com. We should also be able to find LNPG, and note that we find LNPG as well as Artanis 0.5.1, the version that contains feature enhancements required by LIMS nucleus. So let's try to install the client. I do not have a database running on this instance, so we can't test the full functionality, but we can at least execute PSQL and look for a reasonable error message. We can also determine which PSQL we are using. We need to source the profile, and then we get the expected error message. So we have not provided arguments that indicate the database. Which PSQL are we working with? We're working with the one that is defined by our Guix profile. And we can see that it's been installed into our profile. So in summary, I used to have to pass around my PostgreSQL client recipe to users who were interested in the client so that they could install from file. Now I can provide them with my channel instructions where they can modify their channel.scm and use Guix package install directly. That is more convenient, but if you had to modify channels.scm for every non-Guix package you wanted to use, that could get cumbersome. It would be nice to have a central location where developers can submit their packages, and that does exist at GitLab non-Guix. So in the next video, we'll look at how to make a submission to the non-Guix channel. If you have questions as to the suitability of LIMS nucleus for your process, contact us at info@labsolutions.com.